We're going to start with Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett. She should be confirmed. Should she be confirmed before the election? The president says yes, Democrats say no, but what can they do about it? Do they slow down the confirmation process or even refuse to take part in it? And what about the president's repeated refusal to say he will abide by the results of the election? Well, let's talk about it all with Congressman Ted Deutch, a Democrat member of Congress for the last 10 years. He represents the 22nd Congressional District, North Broward, Southern Palm Beach counties, and he is joining us live now via Skype from Boca Raton. Congressman, good morning. Great to see you.
Great to see you too, Michael. Good to be with you.
Congressman, let's begin with that nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. First, give us your reaction when you heard she was the nominee.
I will, Michael, but before switching to the politics, let me just quickly tell you that before I came home, I joined a number of my colleagues in paying respects to the late Justice Ginsburg, whose body was the first woman to lie in state in the United States Capitol and the first Jewish American to lie in state, which speaks to the importance of her and her contributions to our country. And so here we are. There is now a vacancy, and what's so frustrating is the refusal of the Republicans, everyone in the Senate, from Mitch McConnell to Lindsey Graham to our own Senator Marco Rubio, to just follow what they said should happen the last time there was a vacancy. They decided that when there was 9 months until an election, we shouldn't move forward with a Supreme Court nominee. Now we're already voting in Florida and other places around the country. And there's a reason that the majority of the American people think that this should wait. And then they turn and they look at this candidate and realize that the president is trying to ram through a Supreme Court justice who will help him overturn the Affordable Care Act, take away protections for over 100 million Americans, take away health insurance altogether from tens of millions of Americans, all at the same time that he's going to have a candidate a nominee who wants to roll back protections on women's reproductive rights, and who thinks, if you can believe it, that returning felons shouldn't be able to vote but deserve to buy a gun. That's what this is about.
Yeah, well, that enumeration, the list of all the reasons why you and other Democrats object to the nomination. But let's talk about the timetable, Congressman, because the president and the Senate, obviously Senator McConnell, want to move forward. They want to confirm her before November 3rd, before the election. Is that going to happen?
Well, obviously, Senator McConnell intends to go forward. I wish that he would listen to the bipartisan opposition to taking a path that's not only hypocritical, it's contrary to the way that this has always been handled. People are voting in this country, and that's the reason the majority of Americans believe that they should have a say. Just as Marco Rubio said the last time there was a vacancy, that the American people should have a say in who the next Supreme Court justice is. Michael, on average, for the members of the Supreme Court now, it took 70 days to get them confirmed. We have an election that's already started, and election day is barely more than 35 days away. It just doesn't make sense. So what will people do? I imagine that a whole lot of people are going to be reaching out to their senators, particularly here in Florida, Senator Scott and Senator Rubio, to tell them that this isn't something the president should be allowed to get away with. He shouldn't be allowed to ram through a nominee like this, and that they should actually stand up for the Constitution. They should stand up for our democracy and make sure that the people have a say in who this next Supreme Court justice is going to be.
Yeah, well, Congressman, as you well know, as we and others have reported, both Senators Scott and Rubio have said they support her nomination and they are going to vote to confirm her. Let's talk a little bit about presidential politics. I saw the president Friday when he was out in Doral. And I've got to say, and I'm not speaking as a partisan here, just as a reporter, he exuded energy, and the crowd that came to see him was just wildly enthusiastic. And I guess my point is that when Vice President Biden goes out to campaign, certainly he is observing social distancing. He doesn't go out as much to campaign as the president does, but I don't see that same level of enthusiasm for Joe Biden. What do you see?
Well, Michael, I would point you to literally every poll that consistently shows, both nationally and in the swing states, great enthusiasm for Joe Biden. So I'm not worried about the rallies that the president tries to hold to feed his ego, where he brings together large numbers of people, often without masks, often putting themselves at risk in complete contravention of this pandemic and the fact that it's a president who knew how deadly it was, did nothing about it. We're all paying for it now. That's not what this is about. This is about who's going to turn out to vote on election day and in this election, and people who are voting already. And that's what we ought to be looking at. But since you brought it up, when you talk about the president going out and talking about the Hispanic community, in our community, Michael, there are so many people who came from other countries in our hemisphere, or the children of people who came, immigrants who came from those countries, and they know what it's like when a leader stands up and says that he will not assure a peaceful transition of power if he loses the election. They understand that. That's why so many people fled to our country, because of our great democracy and the peaceful transition of power and people's ability to influence what happens. So I'm not so worried about a rally. I'm really focused on making sure that people understand in this case, and they do understand, because I've heard from so many of my constituents, the threat that Donald Trump poses to our democracy when he says that he can't even commit to honoring the outcome of the election.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, frankly, I think the most disturbing thing that Donald Trump has said, among the many disturbing things, was his refusal to say, yes, I will submit to the will of the people and accept the results. Instead, he says, well, we'll have to see. What if he says that Tuesday night in the debate? What should Joe Biden say, and what should Chris Wallace say?
Well, first of all, who speaks like that? Who says that they're not going to respect the will of the voters? They can't commit to a peaceful transition of power. That's the kind of language that authoritarians use. It's the kind of language that authoritarians use everywhere, and we've seen it in our Western Hemisphere. We've seen it around the world. So I hope that they'll ask the president that question at the debate. And if the president can't commit it, then what I'm confident of is that two things will happen. Vice President Biden will point out the same things that I'm pointing out, that this is contrary to how presidents behave. It's just contrary to how things work or should work in our country. And number two, the American people get it. They understand that kind of dangerous talk, trying to undermine people's faith in our elections, which has been the president's effort for a while now, because he knows he can't win on anything else. So he's trying to stir up all kinds of conspiracy theories and controversy. They know that it's not a winner. They see right through it. And I'm looking forward to that exchange taking place at the debate.
Yeah. Congressman, as you well know, the president, the White House helped broker the deal between Israel now and Bahrain, as well as the United Arab Emirates. And you are the representative in the most Jewish district in the state of Florida, maybe one of the most. You have more Jewish constituents than any other member of Congress. And in my experience, I have a lot of Jewish friends who say, yeah, don't like Donald Trump for his style or things that he says or tweets, but he is a great friend to Israel, and they look at these deals that he has helped broker, and they say, boy, that's one more reason to vote for him. What do you say?
Well, clearly, peace is something that we should celebrate. And I went to the White House for the signing of these accords. I'm thrilled to see countries making peace with Israel, adding to the list. There's so much that they share, both in terms of the security threats of Iran and opportunities, economic opportunities, all of the things that Israel offers the rest of the world that I'm thrilled more countries want to be a part of. But there's always been bipartisan support for that. There was bipartisan support for the Obama-Biden $38 billion, the largest security assistance in history of the state of Israel. There was bipartisan support when missiles were raining down on Israel, and Joe Biden, Vice President Biden, then ensured that Israel got the Iron Dome that it needed to protect itself. So there's always been bipartisan support. But Michael, let me just make this observation. And I'm not the only person saying this. Abe Foxman, former head of the ADL, made this point recently as well. The Jewish community knows that Israel and the U.S.-Israel relationship are strongest when America is strongest and when the Jewish community is secure. And when the President of the United States, yes, hosts a peace conference and then at the same place in the White House welcomes True News, which is a fake news outlet that's been banned by YouTube, whose owner is an anti-Semite, and stands up and talks about the anti-Semitic QAnon conspiracy theory as something that he values. The FBI has called this a domestic terror threat, and the President of the United States says that these are great Americans, which sounds a whole lot like what he said after the neo-Nazis and white supremacist march in Charlottesville. In terms of where the Jewish community sits, yes, we care deeply about the U.S.-Israel relationship, and that is strongest when there is a secure, united country. And this president, time and time again, has tried to divide the country and has, frankly, welcomed support from people who ought to be condemned.
Yeah, we acknowledge that. Congressman Ted Deutch, always good to speak with you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be with you.